Hi, my name is Matt Hammond. I am here to talk to you guys about some exciting IPOs that are coming up this week for March 8th, 2021. I love to trade IPOs the same way a day trader would trade any stock, basically because every trade involves identifying an entry point and an exit point, and trading an IPO off the debut makes it that much easier because you don't even have to think about the entry point. My strategy is to buy the second it debuts, and I have a really great technique for ensuring that you buy it the second that it opens up. You get in front of everybody else who's not an investment bank and a hedge fund. Unfortunately, they get in before we do. But all of these IPOs, especially the hot ones, have built-in volume. They have built-in demand. So if you can get in right away, there's a very good chance, more often than not, that you're going to be able to have an opportunity to sell at a profit. The question is just, when do you exit? Do you exit a few minutes in for a quick gain? Do you ride it out a little bit and take huge gains? I've been doing this for about a year. I can't say I've never lost, but almost every time I did lose, I had opportunities to take wins. I just got a little bit greedy, and I've made a substantial amount of money. And I'm not a good day trader. I'm not a good trader, really. I have invested well, and I've used this IPO strategy to make a lot of rather quick money. I just wish there were more blockbuster IPOs. There aren't a lot, but we've got two hot ones coming up this week, and I'd like to talk to you about them a little bit. The first one is Roblox, which is not technically an IPO. It's a direct listing, similar to what Palantir did. And the second one is Coupang. It is a traditional IPO, and I'm going to go through both of them with you and tell you what I like about them. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. These are just ideas. This is informational, as you know, blah, 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 standard boilerplate. Anyway, let's jump into things. Ready? So, for the week of March 10th, 2021, we are looking at Roblox, which will list under the ticker RBLX, and Coupang, which will list under the ticker of CPNG. Both are on March 10th, so it's hard to play both of them unless you're willing to split your funds. I kind of like to go all in. Of course, play with what you can afford to lose. Good news is you're probably not going to lose everything, at least not right away. There are ways to manage your downside. We can talk about that on another time. Right now, I just want to focus on what these two companies are about. So let's start with Roblox. It is the more, I would say, well-known. People understand what Roblox is, mostly because their kids play it. In fact, a ton of kids play this, and if you haven't heard of this, it's probably because you're not a kid, or you don't have kids, or you don't have friends who have kids, but it's huge, and I'll get to that in a minute. So what is Roblox? According to Roblox, Roblox is a global platform where millions of people gather together every day to imagine, create, and share experiences with each other in immersive, user-generated 3D worlds. Roblox is free to download and is free to play on all modern smartphones, tablets, computers, on Xbox One, Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and that pretty much sums it up. A better way to explain it is, if you saw the movie Ready Player One, it's basically the multiverse, and there are games within games. So users create their own avatar, they run around and talk with other people. They've got chat, you can chat. They've added voice chat is now coming in. So you really just run around with your avatar, interact with other people. You can buy stuff, which is pretty key, and we'll get to that in a second. The most important thing is there are games within Roblox. So people are spending a lot of time going into Roblox and then playing games where they play against each other. So really, it's a lot more than just a game, because people pay to advance further in these games. They pay to dress up their avatar. They pay for pets and other, toys and gadgets and homes. I don't play it myself, but I've watched a lot of videos, and it is a lot more than a game. It's a lot more like a social media platform plus a gaming console of its own, plus an economy and a marketplace, plus its own currency. It's got a lot going for it, and I'll dive deeper into that in just a second. First, I want to talk about the IPO itself, because that's what I'm most interested in. When you're buying an IPO, although this is a direct listing, I'm just going to call it an IPO because that simplifies things. It's very rare that the debut price of a stock is the all-time high. In most cases, it runs up for a little bit, a few days, a few weeks, but at some point it usually comes back down. There are very few exceptions to this rule if you look at things over a long enough time period. One of the reasons is that a lot of stocks have a lockup period which expires about 6 months into it, and the stock will drop down below the initial debut price. Another reason is simply that with traditional IPOs, you've got the underwriters who sell their stock to large investment banks, hedge funds, pension funds. Those are the big time investors that they want to put the company's shares into those investors' hands before they sell it to the retail public. And it seems really unfair because you see a stock like Snowflake get sold to Warren Buffett for $120 a share, and all the other investment bankers and hedge funds get to buy in for $120 a share. And then we all sit there on the day it's supposed to IPO, and these things do not go, it's not like it goes for sale at 9:30 the morning of the IPO. You can't just buy it at 9:30, it doesn't open at 10 o'clock. There's no set time for these. They just start trading once they've figured out what the price is that the public's willing to pay, and then they start selling it. Sometimes that's 10:30, 11 o'clock. Sometimes it's late as 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So these IPOs, the traditional IPOs, as a retail investor, you're usually kind of screwed because you're buying, for example, Snowflake, we didn't get to buy until it was $245 a share, whereas the investors who were able to buy at the IPO price paid $120 per share. And we're sitting there watching it go from 120 to 140, 150, and we can't do anything. We can't buy it. This is just the indication price, which you can see on some apps, and I talk about that in other places. Point is, with a direct listing like what Roblox is doing, that there is no IPO price that's different from the debut price. We get to buy it at the same price as all the institutions, all the hedge funds, all the pension. We get it at the same price as everybody else, which is great. However, there are almost 200 million shares being floated, which is a lot. Typical IPOs are 30, 40 million shares. That's a pretty big IPO. And there's no lockup period on this one, which means, in theory, all 199 million shares could start trading, could start selling right away, which would probably outpace demand and the stock price would drop. However, I believe that most of the employees and long-term investors are going to be holding, and there is a huge demand for this. It's being hyped on Wall Street Bets. Everyone on Twitter is talking about it. Every parent who has a kid who has a stock account is buying this. It is a huge stock. It has a lot of retail, a lot of brand recognition in the retail market, and I expect that the price, if it debuts where it's sort of expected to be at around $45, $50 a share, I believe there's going to be a lot of demand for this, and I will be trying to buy it right away. About the company itself, it's not profitable. It's in growth mode. It's been around since 2004, started as a pretty basic platform, and it's just grown and, of course, blew up in the COVID environment. When all the kids were at home, they didn't have anything to do. The parents needed to keep them busy. Mommy, Daddy, please, I want some Robux. Okay, just, stay out of my hair. Let me do my job. So they did have expanding losses, quite extensive expanding losses from 2019, where the losses were 71 million, to 2020, when they hit over $250 million in losses. Good news is revenue is up 82%, which doesn't outpace losses on a percentage-wise, but it does signify a large amount of growth, almost $1 billion. So Roblox is a high growth company. It is incredibly popular, and they're doing everything they can do to grab market share right now. Some key statistics to give you an idea of how big Roblox is: it has 3 billion total engagement hours each month. It has over 36 million active daily users. Just think about that for a second. 36 million people are playing in Roblox every single day. I mean, there's only 40 countries with more than 36 million people in it. So if Roblox was its own country, it would be in the top 50 countries in terms of population. Okay, it has 170 million registered users, which is insane. That's, half of America, basically. And the average user spends over 2.5 hours per day, and would probably spend more time if their parents would let them, or they had more money to spend on it. There's over 18 million games that have been developed within Roblox. I mean, some of them are lame, but I think the top 500 games earned over millions of dollars. I mean, the developers, there's over 7 million developers. There's development studios that have grown out of just creating Roblox games. And I don't think it's going to be too much longer before major game developing companies are going to stop trying to compete directly for the kind of multiverse environment that Roblox has created and start developing games within Roblox. 85% of their users are under the age of 15, which in one way is really great because these people are, these kids really are establishing their avatars, they're establishing their identities, their communities, and that should create stickiness that as these kids grow up, they've adopted Roblox as their sort of virtual reality world, and if they can hold on to those users, then they will have conquered the market. And just another statistic that just blew my mind was that I think the statistic was actually over 2/3, but over 60% of children ages 9 to 12 in the US play Roblox, which is a very valuable demographic in terms of marketing. And Roblox makes toys, and we'll get to it in a second, but Roblox has a lot going for it. So why I like it. Okay, so kids pay Robux, which is the in-game currency, to advance in the games, to get special access to levels in the games, to dress up their avatars, to buy things within the games. And kids are constantly begging their parents for Robux. Mommy, Daddy, can I get more Robux? And parents are buying cards for birthdays and Christmas, gift cards to charge up their Robux accounts, and uncles and aunts and all the, kids love this stuff. I've heard people call it crack for kids. But one of the things that is incredibly powerful for Roblox's bottom line is that parents are able to set up an allowance system where kids get a certain amount of money, basically a subscription system for kids to continuously fund their Robux accounts every month or every week. So there's the income stream is rather sustainable. Beyond that, they talk about expanding into China as being a huge step, and they've partnered with Tencent, which is the largest video game company in China. Tencent runs WeChat, and if you know anyone who is Chinese or has Chinese families, WeChat is pretty much everything. I mean, you could have a phone that only has WeChat on it, and it would do 99% of what we use our phone for. They're also trying to expand their demographic out of just targeting kids, with adults being catered to with live concerts and events, because this truly is a social community. It's a social sphere. You go in there, and they've even expanded into virtual reality, so it's not too difficult to really see this as the Ready Player One environment, where you are just completely immersed in this social environment. You're playing games, you're talking to other people, and you're going to concerts. You could even be going to work through Roblox. Okay, they are constantly improving the graphics and the physics engine that runs behind Roblox. It's pretty amazing. This was actually built originally out of a high school physics simulator. That's what the owner and the founders originally created, and when they saw how people were, especially kids in high school, and I had this in high school, I remember playing with it, and we built cars and crashed them into each other. And the guys are like, oh yeah, well, if kids like this, what if we built a physical world where they could interact with each other? And that grew into Roblox. The graphics have improved greatly from the original versions. It's far less pixelated and far more, smooth, and it's starting to emulate reality. And they just recently acquired Loom AI, which has a really cool engine for creating lifelike avatars, complete with facial gestures, and you get a lot of personality in the avatar now. So it really allows people to be very creative, and it feels a lot more realistic. I like this because there is a lot of hype around this, and that kind of hype is something you always look for because it creates the demand that pushes these IPOs price up pretty dramatically as soon as they start trading. And if you can get in right away, you have an advantage because everyone else is just waiting for it to show up and then buying it. And if you saw Ready Player One, it's very easy to imagine Roblox becoming that. So little bit on the risks and the downside. I mean, it is a high float. If 199 million shares just start selling right away, there's just not going to be enough demand, and the price will drop. But that happened with Palantir, and Palantir had a lockup, but I don't think people really understood what Palantir was, and there was a lot of negative press about it. So I don't think it really captured the retail investor the way that Roblox will. I think a better analogy would be Airbnb, which did initially spike despite being, a huge premium being paid by retail investors over what the IPO price was. So, with these brand name, high recognition, high growth, there's a lot of excitement. There'll be a lot of people piling in to buy this. The other risk, I think, long term, although buying on the IPO, I don't know if long term is the best position to hold, although I probably will hold at least a portion of it, is that other competitors, Google started Stadia, which kind of flopped, as a sort of shared user experience software. Fortnite, which is really a first-person shooter, but is kind of on the level of engagement, and people, who love, I guess, just first-person shooters live in Fortnite. And Fortnite could conceivably expand into other, offering other gaming strategies. But I don't see a lot of other downsides to Roblox. It's pretty much everything I'm looking for in an IPO to play. Again, that one debuts on March 10th, and I believe it's on everybody's radar. So I suggest, I'll be buying it. No suggestions. Do what you want. The next one is a little bit more obscure. It's Coupang. You probably haven't heard of Coupang unless you're South Korean or have South Korean relatives, but it is Amazon's biggest threat in South Korea, and it's come out of nowhere since about 2010, I think it started, and is now kind of neck and neck with Amazon. And the way it's gotten there is that it focused on super fast delivery. Basically, they set up over 100 delivery points throughout South Korea, which is not a huge country, but has a substantial population. Not quite as much as Roblox, or more than Roblox, I should say. And they are delivering in often less than 24 hours, and typically within a few hours of people placing their orders, which is pretty impressive. And they're still competing with Amazon. So it's e-commerce, that's hot. We've seen other regionally kind of based e-commerce IPOs like Jumia did pretty well, and Ozone, the Russian one, it took a little while to heat up, but it eventually pulled through. So the IPO is listing on the New York Stock Exchange. It's 120 million shares, which is a pretty big float, and the expected IPO price is $27 to $30, which means you probably won't be able to get your hands on it for that much. I would expect it to be somewhere in the $50 to $60 range, maybe a little bit less. It is debuting on the same day as Roblox. The market's been pretty weak. I mean, the last week was brutal, so hopefully we're turning around. But to be honest, I probably will not play Coupang simply because I will be jumping in on Roblox unless the market is incredibly weak, in which I might sit them out, but that's unlikely. Okay, Coupang is not profitable. Revenue is growing very fast, up 91% to $12 billion in 2020, up from 2019. So some key statistics is that it has over 100 fulfillment centers, not just near all the major cities, but in all the major cities and near all the smaller cities. Well, in all the smaller cities, and near even the little tiny villages and towns. So they are ready to bring you the most popular products right away. They have 15 million active users, which is 25% of the South Korean e-commerce market, which is on par with Amazon. And they've got 32% of their customers subscribing to its membership product, which is essentially Amazon Prime or their equivalent. So they've got a pretty substantial market share. They're growing faster than Amazon in South Korea, and their kind of critical component that's beating Amazon, which is hard for Amazon to quite catch up on, or is constantly trying to, but has other focuses, is the speed of delivery. What I like about it is it's e-commerce and it's a big company. They beat Amazon at their own game, delivering faster. And similar region-specific IPOs have done pretty well. Jumia, Ozone. It's e-commerce, you know. E-commerce is big. I don't know, what more you want to say. The risks and the downside, well, of course, you compete with Amazon, you're competing with the giant. It's not necessarily a winner-takes-all market, but, it is. There might be room for two for a while, but people start to, you don't want to be number two in this market, you want to be number one. It could also be overpriced when it debuts on the public markets. These IPOs have been really inflated. You pay a serious premium as a retail investor to get in on the debut compared to what the IPO is sold to the institutions for. And in some cases, it hasn't been able to maintain that. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't want to be taking a long-term position all at once on the debut. I might start a position here, but rarely do we see a traditional IPO debut at the all-time high and stay that way for the first year. If you like Coupang, it's not a bad time to start a position. It probably is a pretty good swing trade or day trade, but there is the risk that the brand recognition just won't be there for retail investors to really pile in, at least not in America. Maybe the South Korean market can carry it. And, I've found that when there are multiple IPOs on the same day, the strongest one carries the day, and that would be Roblox. So, make up your own mind here. This is just some ideas, giving you a little bit of background on some companies that are coming up. It has been very profitable for me to trade IPOs on the debut. I have traditionally just been I'd say a casual investor. I buy positions in things like PayPal or Facebook or Google or Amazon many years ago, and I've just held those. But my portfolio blew up in the last year simply by buying the IPOs and selling them within the first 2 days. And I have a lot more information over on IPOwarriors.com, strategies, insights, analysis, breakdowns of previous trades. Love to have you join me over there, kind of just getting things started. But I look forward to your comments, to your feedback. Smash that like button and subscribe to my channel I'm going to try to do these every week. So thanks for your time. Cheers. Bye, guys.